Go to our website, goclearswipe.com, give us a call. It's a free demo to take a look at it, and if we can save you the money, great. Let's look into it and, again, be able to take that money, put it back in your pocket or just simply back into the business.
Thank you so much for joining the We Don't Play podcast show today, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm great. I'm so great. And I'm glad that you're here to help us avoid high cost processing fees, especially with cards that people want to save on. And, people keep getting hidden fees, late fees, overdraft fees, all types of fees. And I'm glad that you're here to help us demystify how we can do better with CLEARswipe.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks for being here. I want us to roll it back into the beginning. Where did CLEARswipe come from? How did you start the business? Just give us the vision so that whoever's listening, at least they know the backstory and they can also connect when they now want to choose a business that they want to work with and also connect with too for future purchasing and also future processing.
Sure. So I was approached by a friend of mine who's been in the industry for 30 plus years, semi-retired. I own an existing business. So as soon as he approached me, asking about credit card fees and did I kind of understand the back end of it and whatnot, at the end of the day, I realized it's the third largest cost for most businesses. So for us, beyond legal and advertising, it's our third highest cost. So during our peak years, we were paying approximately $250,000 per year in credit card fees. And for me, I just thought, it's the cost of doing business. That's just what it is. Well, after understanding kind of how it actually works, we were just taking on that fee. So whether someone is using a debit card, American Express, a high, awards card, whatever it is, we were taking on that fee no matter what. So once he explained to me what dual pricing is, which we'll discuss today, it explained that I can now give my customers an option on how to pay. So now they can choose if they want to pay with a card or cash or ACH, Zelle, whatever that is. So once I understood there was a way to get rid of that fee in a compliant way, then I was hooked immediately. So as soon as I implemented it with my current business, they got rid of all the processing fees, no objections from the existing customers because I was giving them options. I said, heck, it's a way for us to start doing this as well, especially being a consumer and being a business owner. We initially just started about a year ago. We started the business, and so that's kind of what started the whole thing, and got us involved in it.
Congratulations! That's a huge win. And I know a lot of people want to really understand what this is all about. Could we just break down even what processing fees are, why they exist, why are they different percentages, why do different merchants have different price points, and why do even different vendors work with different brands or consumers?
Sure, yeah, great question. So no matter what, anytime you swipe a card, Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, they have a fee, okay, which is called interchange. So that's just the cost of owning the card and using that swipe. Visa automatically takes their fee. Now, all businesses are different. So you have high-risk businesses, you have low-risk businesses, and so a lot of that depends on the fee. So, a coffee shop, for example, you go in, you buy a coffee, there's very little issues with that, right? You get your coffee, you tap to pay, that's it, you're done. For the most part, there's no chargebacks, there's no disputes, there's no sort of issues with any sort of transaction like that, okay? Then you have very high-risk type businesses. Tow trucks, for example. Somebody tows your car, people get upset, they pay the fee to get out, and they may now charge their card back. So you have low risk and high risk type businesses, okay? So that's the first thing to kind of look at. And then based on those businesses kind of determines what kind of fees you can get. So we operate like an insurance broker, okay? So I have access to all the banks, all the different merchants, all the different types of equipment, invoicing platforms. And then based on what type of business we are approaching determines what we can offer as far as equipment and rates go. And so rates are always going to fluctuate, okay? Now, for example, an American Express Platinum card is going to run you a lot more as a business than if I pay you with just a basic Chase debit card. So those fees end up being higher. So example, when you run an American Express card, you get all these points, right? And all these benefits and all these perks. Well, it's not American Express that's paying the fees. It's not you that are paying the fees. It's the businesses that are accepting your cards. They're the ones that are actually paying those fees, which in turn is giving you those benefits. And so when you look at it that way, small businesses are the ones that are taking these on just to allow you to now, take on that actual card. And unfortunately, we can't really control what those fees are. So, again, it really just depends on the type of business, the volume they're doing, the risk that, Visa takes on by accepting cards. And so that all kind of fluctuates, case by case there.
This is good. Thank you for breaking it down. I believe some people also just get into it based on the brand name before they get to know the processing fee. Like, oh, I know PayPal, and then you start hearing 2.9% plus 30 cents. Then you hear Stripe, you start hearing some type of percentages too. People hear the brand name before the processing fee. Is there a way people can understand the processing fee before they know the brand they want to work with?
So, again, someone like Stripe, GoDaddy, PayPal, everybody knows those names, right? So it's automatically trusted when you, build a website or start a business. You can typically go online, fill out an application and get approved through one of those different companies, okay? Now, yes, typically those fees are fairly high. You're paying 2.5% to 3% plus 30%, plus 20 or 30 cents on top of that, okay? Well, that becomes very expensive, whether your average ticket size is $10 or $10,000, 3.5% becomes very, very high, and very difficult to take on. So most people starting a business, the last thing they're even thinking about is, finding a reputable company or a business to assist them with credit card fees. They're trying to set up their business, the business model, marketing, and office. People just want to be able to simplify it and take a card. So that's why a lot of times you'll just go on and you'll find someone like Stripe or GoDaddy and you just sign up and doing it and you just figure, heck, it's cost of doing business. The goal is to do a little more research, get online, try to do some comparisons. More importantly, shop around, call a few companies, get some different quotes. There are plenty of opportunities and plenty of companies that can determine those fees and get you down to a way lower fee, whether you're doing traditional processing, surcharging, dual processing, whatever you're doing, there's definitely ways to get those fees lowered for you.
Thank you. Let's even dive into dual processing. How does that work? What is it? And how can a business integrate that into the existing system?
Sure. So dual pricing is what we really focus on. To me, it's the most transparent way to advertise your pricing. Okay. So the way dual pricing works is you want to be transparent. You want to give them a credit card option and a cash option. Okay. Now, cash, as we know, can be ACH. It can be physical cash. It can be Zelle, Venmo, Cash App. There's a million ways of cash payments. So for dual pricing, we're going to advertise that. So whether you're going to a smoothie shop or you bought a brand new, AC unit and you're receiving an invoice, whatever it is, we're going to always display two prices. You're going to have a credit card price and you're going to have a cash price. So we just do simple math. Let's say you're selling a product and it's $100, okay? And you as a business, you want to net $100. So when I post that price, again, whether it's inside of a store or it's an invoice that I'm sending somebody, when somebody opens up that invoice, they're going to see $103 will be the credit card price and $100 will be the cash price. So as a business, that business always is going to net the $100 that they need to net, okay? Me as a consumer, I have a choice on how I want to pay. Now, I may still want my, my actual miles or my points on my Amex card. So I say, sure, no problem. I'll just use my card and I'll pay the extra $3 to cover that processing fee. Okay. Or I don't want to pay that fee. Here's cash, here's Venmo, again, a bunch of different ways to pay cash. So dual pricing is being transparent and giving people the opportunity to make a decision and a choice of how they choose to pay and if they want to pay that fee. More importantly, the business now gets to net 100% of whatever they're advertising their prices. So at the end of the month, again, all businesses are different. Some processors keep that 3 or 4% every time you swipe the card, or they just bill you at the end of the month. Okay. Well, if you have dual pricing implemented, our business model is now that the business never gets hit with a fee. So now you have no fee whatsoever at the end of the month. We're not deducting any money out of your accounts. That fee was now passed on to the customer. The customer had the option of how they chose to pay. And now the business has no fee at the end of the month. So that's what we really like to focus on because of the transparency. And again, giving the customers the option on how they choose they want to pay.
This is great. It reminds me of when I went to a store and they asked me, do you want to pay credit, debit, or cash? And most people hear that, but they don't know it as dual pricing or, that kind of pricing structure that gives that opportunity to have a better response. I think the same thing with Eventbrite. Sometimes you either let them cover the cost or you cover the cost and they just pay that net price. So I see that, and I think it also makes sense for people who want to decide if they want to actually have that into their integrated system. Now, people who already have QuickBooks or have HoneyBook or have Dubsado or Wave, all these platforms that people use for processing, or even Stripe, how does ClearSwipe integrate into these systems? Do they have to leave the platform, or do they have to process it and then manually come in to make those updates?
Man, great question. That's something I get every single day. Again, anytime we're speaking to a business, a lot of times the biggest challenge is, as a business, change. Change is tough. You're operating a business, you're busy, there's a million things going on. The last thing you want to do is have to change a big system, especially if you have a lot of equipment. So let's start with QuickBooks. Okay, QuickBooks is one of our best customers. So we have a platform that we use that integrates directly with QuickBooks. So QuickBooks currently does not allow dual pricing. So if you are a QuickBooks user and that's how you invoice, or that's how you carry your books, do your taxes, whatever it is, when you send an invoice out of QuickBooks, they do not offer what's called dual pricing. So our system could integrate with QuickBooks. So you as a business, you don't have to change anything. Everything's the exact same. You're not changing any platforms. All your data is still in QuickBooks. But when you go to send the invoice and you hit click and save, we now grab that invoice, we automatically calculate the dual pricing. So let's just use 3%. So now we automatically calculate that. So when the invoice goes out from QuickBooks and the consumer receives that invoice via email or text, and they open it up, now they have two options. They have that $103 option or the $100 option on how they choose to pay. So again, that's always an ideal situation for both us and a business, because not having to change equipment or platforms is obviously very useful. Okay. So that's the picture perfect scenario. However, there are some systems that we just can't integrate with. There's certain systems that are, that they're just simply locked. Meaning that if you have a specific CRM or a platform for like a church or a school, which is definitely some businesses that we are currently signing up right now, because those businesses, a lot of them are nonprofits, they need the extra funds there. However, they have certain CRM systems that are closed. There's no open API because they want the merchant processing. That's how those CRMs are actually making their money. So we have workarounds where people can continue that CRM, and then we can connect our actual invoicing platform, and then we can just import the data so you do not have to change the systems. And when I say import data, if you keep all your books in there to do all your numbers, all your monthly expenses, we can simply import the data from our invoicing platform. And then that'll help you collect all of your numbers and then be able to keep your system. So it's a very case by case situation, depending on, again, what type of platform the business is using, how they are currently taking payments, and if they have a bunch of different terminals or iPads, or is it just an invoicing system? So it really does vary.
Thank you. Now, I'm thinking about the people listening, and one of the questions I'm sure they'll ask too is, does this work locally, nationally, regionally, internationally? How well does this work for my business if I'm local or if I'm far from the business? How can it work for me, and how do I make it work?
Sure, yeah, great question. So luckily, dual pricing is compliant in all states. So that's why we shoot for dual pricing. Now, surcharging, which we really haven't talked about yet, we can touch on that here in just a second, but dual pricing is compliant in every state, meaning that any business, doesn't matter what you sell, air conditioning units, bikes, coffee, smoothies, it doesn't matter, dual pricing by displaying two prices and giving customers the opportunity on how they choose to pay. And if they want to pay that fee, that is the compliant process in all states. So we can operate anywhere. We can operate internationally. We have different merchants and banks that we use, in Canada and Europe too as well. And so again, we could sign up anybody. We're locally here in Scottsdale, Arizona. But yeah, anywhere in the country, again, dual pricing is compliant. So this could be for, again, any type of business.
Oh, this is good. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And now another question that comes to mind is, these platforms like Klarna, Afterpay, Sizzle, they also have these structures when people want to choose payments. How does ClearSwipe now come into play so that if they have to make those payments and they already have this existing merchants or this type of fees, it also plays a role where they can still add it to their dashboard or play, like you said, and integrate it so that it's not so confusing for, first of all, the consumer, because a confused mind says no, and then it's also easy for the processor to now get more information out of the intelligence platform that they're creating for the whole brand experience from end to end.
Sure. Yeah. So again, case by case, it depends on the system. It depends on the integration. Again, it's always ideal if we have, and again, we use so many different platforms, whether it's an online invoicing platform or it's a terminal or it's equipment, whatever it is. A lot of times we can just integrate, or we potentially would have to swap something out. So we'd have to look at it. We'd have to see what kind of platform are they on, what kind of fees are they paying. It's got to be worth it to convert, of course. And again, how are they promoting or advertising? Sometimes it's just putting, a simple link on their website or just a simple link on the invoicing. So again, it would just depend, but typically we can either integrate or we would try to work out a solution to swap that system and try to kind of give them some sort of apples to apples. So it's not so much of a change for them.
I love that. Okay. Now, if somebody is ready to go and they're like, okay, I've heard everything, I think this is what I need, and I believe it would be helpful to allow people to make a choice when they want to make payments, in store or online. Now, the next question that they're probably going to be thinking too is how can they onboard this to their system, and how dedicated should they get into it, especially like when you think about training. It's a new platform. Is there somebody that's going to onboard them? How much does it cost? Those are the questions now I'm sure they're wondering, okay, we're ready to go, but how do we evaluate this so we can have a better informed decision to make?
Sure. Yeah. So we always do a discovery call first, so again, we want to make sure we're a good fit for your business as well. There's no reason to force something on. We have to make sure that we're actually a good fit. So we'll do initial discovery call, get on with the actual decision maker or the people that are actually sending the invoices and dealing with the finances of the company. Once we do that discovery call and we understand what it is they're using, how are they invoicing, what kind of fees are they paying? Once we understand what that is, then we can offer what the best solution is for a platform, okay? Most invoicing platforms are extremely inexpensive. You're talking $50 to $70 a month. That includes everything. So that includes the onboarding, the integration, 24/7 customer service. You're just paying for the online invoicing platform. That would include accepting a credit card, accepting ACH, next day funding, which is very important. So any business that you process typically to 5 p.m. based on what time zone you live in, you receive those funds the very next day, into your actual account, which is obviously very important to people. So once we do that discovery call, we figure out what kind of system you need. Then from there, we can give you a basic proposal. And then we'll walk you through a demo. We'll let you see the system. We'll do a shared screen. We'll set up different examples. Again, we can send you invoices. So again, we always want to kind of walk through that demo first, make sure that business or that individual understands it. Then if they like it, then great. We'll get them signed up, which is just a basic application to get them approved for the actual credit card processing. And then from there, once they sign up, then yes, based on what type of system they choose, there's an entire onboarding team that will do an onboarding call with their entire group. So if it's an integration, we'll help out with the integration. We'll make sure everything gets merged over, correctly, and then we'll kind of help them as they do the basic test runs. So we're always going to hold their hand. We're always going to make sure that the system does implement, correctly. Otherwise, it doesn't work for them or for us. So yeah, that is kind of one of the main parts, is that once you decide to convert to dual pricing, then from there, we handle everything else as far as integration and then onboarding from there.
Love that. Love that. It sounds very smooth, very easy to seamlessly process and allow someone to feel comfortable too, making that change. Before we go, if there's one thing you can tell someone that's considering ClearSwipe, what would they be feeling a month, a quarter, a year after they work with ClearSwipe when it comes to processing fees, saving money, and also just being in control of their business finances? How would they feel, and what would you tell them so that they can also use that to think about their next move?
Sure, yeah. So, I'll give you my personal testimony. Again, on my very busy years, I'm paying about $250,000 a year in credit card fees. So I can tell you how good I feel at the end of each month when that money does not pull out of my account. When you're spending $20,000, $25,000 a month on simple fees, and on the first of every month, they pull all that money out of your account, that no longer happens. And I can tell you right now, it doesn't matter how much business you do, it doesn't matter how much money you make. If you do not have those fees at the end of the month, you're going to be extremely happy. Now, you take that money, you do whatever you want with it. It's your money, right? It might be for bonuses. You might be able to push more marketing, which can now grow your business. Maybe you can hire additional staff. Maybe you can pass out bonuses at the end of the year. You can do a big Christmas party, again, whatever you want to do. But I can tell you, from now being an actual, consumer and owner of a business, understanding dual pricing, giving my customers the option. So in my business, I just send invoices. So my customers always have an option on how they want to pay. They can put their account routing number, they can write a check, whatever it is, they never pay a fee. So our customers don't get upset because you don't automatically surcharge them. You give them that option. But I think that any business owner, again, things are very expensive these days. Inflation, tariffs, again, you name it. Any business, if they can cut a cost, they're going to feel great at the end of every month, quarter, year, whatever it is. So that's what I would say to anybody looking to do this. At least take a look at it. Go to our website, goclearswipe.com, give us a call. It's a free demo to take a look at it. And if we can save you the money, great. Let's look into it and, again, be able to take that money, put it back in your pocket, or just simply back into the business.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jeremy. I appreciate that. This is going to be a bonus question, and you talked about this so that people can also hear it too. What is surcharging, and how do they avoid it? Or if they need it, what do they need to do around it?
Yeah, got you. Good question. So surcharging, which is not compliant in every state, okay, but a lot of businesses do it. So surcharging is just adding the extra, let's just use 3% of the bottom line. So let's say you're at a restaurant, okay? You take your family out, you go to a restaurant, they bring you the bill, okay? At that bill, at the very bottom, they're going to say surcharge. Sometimes they just say processing fees. They don't even tell you what it is, okay? Well, me as a consumer, I might not even see that. So I may just give them my card, they just tap to pay, I get my receipt, I get home, and now I realize I paid an extra 3% on my card, and I didn't have an option to give you cash. Maybe I had cash, and I could have just paid you cash. So surcharging is automatically charging people, which sometimes is a bad taste in your mouth. And, something I would like to point out, and this is not to say anything negative about companies, but if you go to, if you just kind of keep your eyes open after seeing this podcast and knowing it's out there, you go to any Lifetime Fitness gym now, there's a big sign that says, there's a 3% charge for any credit card being used. So now if you want to, go online and you want to try to change your payment method, you could now do that, switch to ACH. Just put your account routing number and now avoid that fee. So any Lifetime Fitness is doing it. Most restaurants are doing it. Heck, my little 3-year-old goes to a trampoline park. It's called Altitude. They now do it. You walk up and it says any card is a 3% fee. Now, me understanding the business, it doesn't upset me because I can imagine what Altitude, Lifetime Fitness, restaurants, whatever it is, I can imagine the amount of fees that they're paying. So I understand it. However, I like to have the option, and I like to know before I make that payment, again, how much I'm actually paying. So that's the big difference between surcharging and dual pricing. Surcharging is also not compliant in all states. So you would have to do your own research, look in the state that you're actually operating at to see if you're even allowed to do surcharging. The last thing I'll say about it is when you swipe a debit card, a card is a card. So even though a debit card is cash, a business is still getting charged that fee, okay? You cannot surcharge on debit cards. You can only surcharge on credit cards. So if you are a business that is doing surcharging and somebody walks in with a debit card, you can't technically even charge them that fee. So again, a lot of different compliances. I think the most thing is being transparent and giving the customer the opportunity of how they choose to pay and if they want to pay that fee or not. That's what I like the most about dual pricing.
Oh, wonderful. Somebody might be asking this too. Is surcharging like gratuity, where it's like a tip, but not really, but they've already gotten their preset and they don't tell you? Some tell you, some don't. So does it have the same effect, or that's completely a different thing entirely?
Yeah, it's a completely different fee. Again, let's say you go to a restaurant. I'll always use, let's just say your bill is $100 because we can do easy math. Well, if you're a proper tipper, you're probably tipping 20%. Okay. So now you're paying $120. There's still a 3% fee on top of that. Okay. So, again, that is separate of gratuity. So now, again, as a consumer, you're going out to eat. You're already tipping 20%, which as you should, if you get good service, right, you should tip. I always say if you're not tipping, then you shouldn't go out to eat. So, again, to all the servers out there, you should get tipped that actual 20%. But now you have an actual 3% to put on top of that. Well, if you're a family, you got 3 or 4 kids, again, things are so expensive these days, those items do add up. So again, I think it is, I do understand it from a business standpoint, but I like the transparency of knowing upfront that you do have that option. Again, whether you have cash or not, you may not have the option to pay, but at least you know that it's there.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much. This is so knowledgeable. And I feel like people now have an idea of what they need to do. And then as a business, they can now make strides that are important to them because they were probably never aware that this was available to them or even possible to even happen. But now that they have that information, they can now go to CLEARswipe.com, get started, start a demo, and get connected so that you can save more money in 2026, especially using this second half of the year to try it out and see how you can make those changes and adjust, what happened last year, this year, and next year get better. And then they can be like you, Jeremy, where they can save money. They don't have to worry about late fees and all this surcharging and all these kind of fees that are, so intense that let's say the first of the month, money comes out and they're like, oh, okay, we have to do this because we have to be compliant. But at the same time, if you can avoid that, then it's easier for them to have more leeway and actually have a better experience for the consumer because now they don't feel like they have overhead costs that are going too crazy for them either.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think, for any business, it's pretty simple too when you sign up. Just kind of the last thing I'll say here is it's a very simple transition, again, based on the complex of your system. Some people have 100 terminals. Okay, well, that's going to be a more complex setup. Doesn't mean we can't do it, but it's going to take a little longer. And so we'll have to put that all together. But this is something that you could technically fill out an application. You can do a demo. You could be signed up within a couple of days. And by next week or next month, you could start saving on those processing fees right away. There's typically no contracts whatsoever. It's a month-to-month type deal. So for some reason you got on the platform and you didn't like it, you're not locked into something. Nobody likes to be locked into long-term contracts. So, again, we want to offer something to make sure it is useful and it's helpful and it's actually helpful for that business. So we don't typically see that happen. However, I know that change is a big hurdle for people. So knowing that you're not locked into some sort of long-term deal or you have to do the system, it's a good thing to at least test, make sure it works for your business model, and then from there, actually start saving that money every month.
Lovely. Wow. This is helpful. I feel relieved, and I'm sure they do too, because now there's a solution and there's a place to go. So I really appreciate you, Jeremy, for being on the We Don't Play podcast show today to tell us about how to avoid high processing card fees and actually do it the right way so people can have more of an opportunity to choose, which is the way to go for most people, in our business world today.
Yeah, and again, thanks so much for having us on there. I hope for some of the listeners, they at least get some education. And whether you hire us or not, it's good to just explore the option and actually know that it's out there. So for any business, doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are, whether you're saving $500 a month or $50,000 a month, it's money saved to the bottom line. So thanks again for having me. I do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Anytime.